you doing, Mr. Myers?
Doing fine for an old guy. There's somebody here.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Goochland County Planning Commission November 7th meeting. Mrs. Parker, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we do have a quorum.
All please rise for the invocation or the pledge and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious God, thank you for enabling us to gather here today. Thank you for this body of people that you have ordained to rule this great county. Now, as we go about doing the business set forth today, help us to keep you first in everything that we say and do. Bless all who are in authority with the proper knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, so that we may prosper under their leadership. Most of all, bind us together in the spirit of love which surpasses all things. It is in your omnipotent name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Patuk. Have we all had an opportunity to review the minutes? We hear a motion.
I move that we approve it as written.
Mr. Myers,
Second.
Mr. Rockefeller, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll now open the citizens' comment period. This is for anything not on the agenda this evening. Please come forward, state your name and address. See no citizen comment period, we will close that. Mrs. Parker.
We have no request to defer, additions, deletions, or changes to the order of the public hearing.
Thank you.
Our first item is a Planning Commission review item. This is an action item for the Planning Commission and does not go before the board. It's in District 5, consideration of a resolution to approve a conceptual master plan for the Oak Hill East Shopping Center, a development with a combination of retail space and office space on Patterson Avenue.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Members of the commission, Mr. Chair, my name is Jamie Sherry. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development, and I'll be presenting this case this evening. The applicant, West Creek Associates LLC, is requesting the review and approval of the conceptual master plan for Oak Hill East Shopping Center. This review is required by the West Creek Business Park proffers and does not need to go to the Board of Supervisors for any additional approval. The subject property is in the northeast quadrant of Route 288 and Patterson Avenue, in the southernmost portion of West Creek Business Park. The comprehensive plan identifies the area for prime economic development. The properties are zoned M1 with proffers and B1 with proffers. The M1 zone portion of the development is governed by the West Creek Business Park proffers, and is the area where the shopping center will be located. The B1 section, which is to the east, if you look at the conceptual plan, it is where the road will be built, the entrance road. Also, in addition, on the zoning, the shopping center would be located within the Route 650 overlay district, so it would also have to meet the requirements and receive a certificate of approval before being constructed. Let's see. All right. So the area that I'm identifying on the map is where the shopping center would be located. The areas to the west are slated for additional expansion of the business park. To the right here, there is a section of property that fronts onto Patterson Avenue that has been recently zoned for future retail commercial shops. And then the area identified that looks like it is subdivision. It is a platted subdivision, but that's where the Patterson Golf Park is currently located. The subdivision that is on the map is the Huguenot Hills subdivision. And then here you have the Greenwood Memorial Gardens Cemetery, and then even farther south, even off the map, you've got some residential neighborhoods that have been established for a while. The West Creek Business Park proffers require this review by the Planning Commission, and all of the conceptual plans were within that development. Approval is to ensure the compliance with the West Creek Business Park proffers. Any additional requirements like zoning or stormwater and things along those lines would be done during the plan of review process, plan of development process. Here is the conceptual master plan. Real quickly, the building 1 right down here is identified for retail. Building 2 is identified for both retail and office. It's retail on the first floor, office on the second floor, and building 3 up here is for retail. And then here's the Patterson Avenue, and there's the road I was referring to, the access road. Here are the elevations that were submitted with this application. The elevations are representative of what the project might ultimately look like. I mentioned earlier that this was in the overlay district. The ultimate building that would be built would have to meet those criteria. So this is just conceptual at this point. The conceptual master plan, staff went through the proffers of West Creek Business Park, and they do meet the proffers. The uses are consistent with the conceptual master plan, are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Conceptual master plan appears to be in compliance with both of the zoning districts and associated proffers, again with the understanding that would all be determined during the plan of review process. And the entrance that I refer to and is on the map has been approved by VDOT. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Gentlemen, any questions for Mrs. Sherry?
Sure. I got a note here from Brian Gunwald, who was one of the owners of the golf range, concerning entrance into his property, and also the two entrances on Patterson being so close together. Could you address that?
Well, I'm trying to figure out the best way to really shorten this. The entrance that was on that's on the conceptual plan is the only thing in consideration for this particular process. As I mentioned, it has been approved by VDOT, and it's my understanding the other one has as well. And so this is part of a larger, I guess, the larger traffic study for the area.
And this is, keep in mind, this is the conceptual plan. It still has to go before review, plan of development.
That's correct.
Right. And meet the overlay requirements. Any other questions?
No.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Parker, we need a motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion?
A motion to approve conceptual master plan for review for Oak Hill East Shopping Center.
Mr. Patuk and
I second it.
Mr. Myers. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mrs. Parker.
Our first public hearing item tonight is in District 1, CU 2019-00016, application by Cellco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, requesting a conditional use permit to construct a 199-foot monopole communication tower at 5390 Matthews Road on tax map number 18-1-0-2-A, The property is zoned agricultural general A1 and is 106.97 acres. The conditional use permit is required by Article 2, Section 3.3 of the Goochland County zoning ordinance. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural enhancement area.
Thank you again, Mrs. Parker. This request is for a telecommunications, let me start over. The applicant, Celco Partnership, is requesting a conditional use permit to construct and operate a 199-foot telecommunication tower. The tower location will be in the western portion of the county. The closest intersection is Matthews Road and Haydensville Fife Road. The subject property is identified by the comprehensive plan as rural enhancement area, as is the area around the property, with the exception of this blue on the map, which is where the Matthews Road Park is located. The property is zoned A1 General Agricultural General, which does allow for this use with a conditional use permit. The subject property, which is identified here in the red, is mostly open farmland, but I did want to point out the surrounding properties that would be closest to any of the road areas over here would be screened somewhat by the surrounding properties that have mature trees on them. On September 9th, a balloon test was held, and a community meeting was held on September 16th. County staff, board member Mr. Alvarez, and commission member Mr. Myers, and 11 citizens were in attendance. There were questions regarding tower appearance, the visibility, health concern, and the expected quality of the cell service. This is a picture that was taken by staff on the day of the balloon float. This was taken actually on the subject property towards the end of the existing driveway. The applicant submitted pictures based on doing a rendering, a simulation, if you will, of what the tower would look like. This is taken just west of the subject property, right on Matthews Road. And this picture right here is taken at the intersection of Matthews Road and Haydensville Fife Road. This is Exhibit A, the conceptual plan. This is a drawing of what the site will look like. This right here is the location of the tower, and you can see it also has the fall zone identified on it. This is the access road that will get to the tower from Matthews Road. The tower will be located approximately a third of a mile from the intersection of Matthews Road and Haydensville Fife Road. I had mentioned that the property was mostly farmland, but there are a significant amount of large trees in existence between the road and the tower. And the tower is sited to fall completely onto the property. In the event you all choose to recommend approval for this tower, staff has put together some conditions. These conditions are consistent with what we've done in the past. There are standard conditions, and both the Planning Commission and the board has actually approved these conditions 2 different times this year on similar towers. I'll go through them very quickly. Stop me if I'm going too fast, but there are several of them. Number 1, it says that the use for this conditional use permit is for a tower. Number 2 says that the conceptual plan, Exhibit A, that was presented to you all tonight, needs to be developed in accordance with that. Before construction, a plan of development will need to occur. The maximum height is 199 feet. All FCC and ACC regulations need to be met, and the tower will not be lit unless it's required. Security, there needs to be a fenced-in area around the base. Number 7, interference. There's to be no interference with any communications or electronic communications within or any electronic equipment in the county. Number 8, the color needs to be neutral. The buffer references some buffering around the base, but it also talks about there being minimal clearing as far as getting the access road and the actual leased site prepared. Number 10 is in reference to the right of first perpetual right. Essentially, the language has to do with the manner in which the county will be offered, and they have a certain amount of time to be able to respond, and if they don't, then the applicant has the right to ask another user to use that location. Also has to do with the county will be responsible for their own equipment, and they will pay the appropriate fees. Construction time, number 11, the construction time is to start within 2 years. The access road is, number 12, is to meet some of the requirements in order to have public safety be able to get back to the site if necessary. And lastly, number 13, I think there's one more after this. 13 has to do with the time frame upon which they will remove in the event the tower is no longer used. And lastly, the transfer or lease in the event the applicant either transfers the property or the lease to another user, they have a certain protocol that they have to follow. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Ms. Sherry? No. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Lori Schweller, attorney with Williams Mullen, representing Verizon Wireless. With me is Stuart Squire, who is the zoning manager for this site with GDN Sites, which is a consultant for Verizon Wireless. I have a presentation for you. I'll try not to cover the items that Ms. Sherry has already covered. This area has been identified by Verizon Wireless as needing better coverage, and there are no existing structures in the area on which Verizon Wireless could co-locate. So we're proposing a new site. This map is showing you current Verizon Wireless sites in Goochland County in blue. The site is marked by a star. The closest 2 sites, which would be what we refer to as handoff sites, are about 3 to 4 miles away. So the 2 closest sites, one that exists and one that we're working on right now, just submitted recently, are about 2.85 miles away, and then the one that you approved earlier this year on Whitehall Road is 4 miles away. So just based on distance alone, you can see that a site is needed in this area. In fact, more sites are needed in the western and southern parts of Goochland County. This is the location of the site on the GIS map, and then on Google Maps you can see that though the area where we'll be accessing the site and building the site is clear, it's surrounded on 2 sides with very dense forest, so that provides some good coverage to the neighboring properties. And this shows you where that 20-foot access and utility easement is located and the site in the corner of the property. And here's just a close-up of the compound. It's a 50 by 50-foot compound, so there's plenty of room to do the landscaping as shown there in the shaded area. There's a 4-foot wide buffer, and we can work with staff during the site planning process to provide any landscaping that's needed. Again, the elevation is 195 with a 4-foot lightning rod, so no lighting will be required at this height, and there will be room for future co-locators in the area. We did do a balloon test on September 10th, and as you can see from this map, The balloon was not visible from all the locations shown in blue. It was only visible right there on Matthews Road and then at the intersection. So I'll show you those. You've seen those pictures from Ms. Sherry's presentation. So I'll quickly go through. Here's the one looking east from Matthews Road. But then northwest of the site, it wasn't visible. West of the site on Matthews Road, not visible. Not visible from the southwest or from the south on Haydensville-Fife Road. Here at the intersection of Haydensville-Fife and Matthews, that's the second place of visibility. You can see in the distance. And then not visible from Haydensville-Fife southeast or northeast. Or Whitehall Road. So you can see that it's well sited, plenty of screening from trees, even with leaves off the trees, it will be well screened. So just one final word about compliance. There was a question raised during our community meeting about FCC regulations and RF emissions. So I just wanted to provide this information that Verizon does have a comprehensive compliance program to make sure that it complies with all FCC standards, including those relating to RF emissions. And I've put the link here to the site that talks about that in great detail and explains how sites such as this, the RF emissions, are many, many times lower than the standards set forth by the FCC. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mrs. Schweller?
No.
Mr. Deeb? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward, please state your name and address. Seeing no one wishes to speak, we will close the public hearing. Gentlemen, do we have any further discussion?
Yes. I move that we recommend this for approval by the Board of Supervisors.
Second. Any further discussion? We have a first by Mr. Myers, a second by Mr. Duke. All those in favor? Aye.
Our next public hearing item is in District 3, CU 2019-00017, application by Goochland County School Board requesting a conditional use permit to construct a new elementary school on tax map number 42-11-0-3-T. The property is zoned agricultural limited A2 and is 104.35 acres. The conditional use permit is required by Article 3, Section 319 of the Goochland County zoning ordinance. The comprehensive plan designates this area as public, county-owned, institutional.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Tom Coleman, principal planner. As Ms. Parker said, this is a conditional use permit for a new school. This would be centrally located in the county in the courthouse village. Looking at the subject property, it is in an area or designated as public, county-owned, and institutional. That is the appropriate place to locate a public facility. The land use plan includes the residential areas to the west and also to the north and south, but clearly the Holland Hill subdivision to the west is the more densely populated area. And there is other public county-owned institutional property to the east of the site that are associated with the elementary school and the county facilities that we are currently in. And look at subject property, it is zoned agriculturally, and there are agriculturally zoned properties generally to the north and south, and some residentially zoned property to the west. And there is some commercial zone property that are associated with the commercial properties that are near the intersection of Fairground and Sandy Hook Road. And again, look at the aerial photo. Again, it shows the single-family subdivision, shows the existing school facilities, and some of the other development to the east. Now, as far as this specific proposal, it would relocate the existing Goochland Elementary School to this location. Right now, the plans are for an approximately 92,000 square foot school with a capacity of about 650 students. The schools did provide this rendering. It is highly conceptual, just to show, give an example of what a building and parking areas and recreation facilities could look like on the property. However, they are in the early stages of planning, and there's no architectural design work that has started on the property. They're anticipating opening in August of 2024. There was a community meeting held in September. About 50 people were in attendance. There was some discussion and questions on traffic, especially at the intersection of Bulldog Way and Route 6 and at St. Hook Road. And a lot of the conversation was about their plans for it, and when they plan on building the school and things like that. But generally, there was no opposition to it, and the general feeling and the consensus of the community meeting was to support the project. With the new public facility, the Planning Commission is charged to determine that it is substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan in this situation, since it is in a property that is designated public, county-owned, institutional, and that comp plan designation specifically mentions public schools as a use that's recommended in that designation. Therefore, locating the elementary school here would be substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan. There just were a number of I'll call them concerns and observations about the proposal. The public schools did hire Timmons to do sort of a traffic observation, high-level analysis of traffic. They looked specifically at those 4 locations: Bulldog Way at Route 6, Bulldog Way at Route 522, and then a couple of the entrances along Bulldog Way that are associated with the existing school facilities. And they did recommend some improvements be considered, and as the schools work through their development plans, we will be looking to implement some of those recommendations that Timmons had in their plan. Also note that the comprehensive plan does encourage sidewalks in the courthouse village, so that's also an item that we'd be looking at. And as I mentioned earlier, the conceptual plans were highly conceptual in nature. So again, we will be looking through the POD process and the certificate of approval process to ensure compliance with the county codes. A couple of CUP conditions. The first one would just designate the school use. The second one would require a plan of development. And the third one would require a lighting plan and dark sky lighting for any lighting that is reviewed or considered for the project. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Coleman? What is the capacity of the current school?
I would refer that question to the applicant. Yes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. I'm Jeremy Raley, Superintendent of Schools, and appreciate the opportunity to spend a few moments with you today. The current capacity of Goochland Elementary School is approximately 330 students, approximately. I don't know the exact number, but it's slightly over 300 students. This proposal is for a 650-student elementary school.
At what capacity do you operate today?
Across the school division, all elementary schools are operating at over 100% capacity. It is our goal that with this school being built that we would conduct a boundary adjustment, and that would allow us to eliminate trailers that are currently on site at Byrd Elementary School and Randolph Elementary School. So ultimately, bringing our entire enrollment within 85% capacity elementary-wide.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Any more questions for Dr. Raley? We will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward? Anyone? We will close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I think this is pretty straightforward.
I think, yeah, I guess my only note was, I guess the sidewalks, if there's, with regard to, we're, in some of the
not that we're tying this to any other cases in the county, but talking about access in the courthouse village area with respect to sidewalks. I guess those will be,
Yeah, we will be looking to, as they work through their development, we also are looking for grants. There's a number of opportunities, but certainly as this project moves forward, we'll be looking for opportunities to provide sidewalks in this area.
awesome. All right. Gentlemen, who would like to make a motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Duke first and Mr. Patuck second. All those in favor? Aye. Mrs. Parker.
Yes, sir. Our next item tonight is in District 4 and 5, RZ 2017-00001A, application by H.H. Hunt Mosaic LLC, requesting a proffer condition amendment to case RZ 2017-00001, proffer number 8, addressing density. The proposed amendment will decrease the maximum number of lots allowed from 520 to 508, and will increase the percentage of permitted townhomes from 40% to 44%. The property is located south of Tuckahoe Creek Parkway and east of Hockett Road, and identified with tax map numbers 58-54-0-1-0, 58-54-0-2-0, 58-54-0-3-0, 58-54-0-4-0, and consists of 207.839 acres. The comprehensive plan designates this area as prime economic development.
Thank you. As Ms. Parker said, the applicant, H.H. Hunt Mosaic LLC, is requesting to amend a zoning proffer pertaining to density and percentage of housing types associated with the 2017 rezoning that allowed for Mosaic and an age-restricted subdivision with a mixture of single-family and townhouse lots. The subject property is located in the eastern portion of the county, specifically the southeast corner of Tuckahoe Creek Parkway and Hockett Road, and connects to Broad Branch Drive. The comprehensive plan recommends prime economic development. And the zoning for the property is zoned RPUD, residential planned unit with proffers, development unit with proffers. The subject property is identified here in the red. To the west and to the south, you've got the West Creek Business Park set for expansion. On the western side, you have some residential, low-density residential, and then up here you have Kinlock. In 2017, this property was rezoned from M1 to RPUD with proffers to develop an age-restricted subdivision to include a mixture of single-family and townhouse lots. The original proffer allowed for a maximum of 520 lots with a maximum percentage of townhouses to be 40% of the development. What they're proposing tonight is to decrease the maximum amount of lots for this development from 520 to 508 and increase the percentage permitted of townhouses from 40 to 44%. On October 2nd, a community meeting was held. Board member Mr. Peterson, county staff, and 15 individuals attended the meeting. Most of the meeting attendants were part of the development team or prospective home builders. There was discussion about time frame and phasing of the development, reason for the amendment, proffer request, and amenities, and nobody expressed opposition. If approved, the proffer would read, let me read it right here. Number 8, density. There shall be no more than 508 residential homes developed on the property. No more than 44% of those 508 homes may be residential townhouses. That concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Sherry?
Just checking the math, the total number of lots is decreasing,
That's correct.
but the percentage of townhouses, I mean, the lots are considered a townhouse is a lot.
Yeah, so
we're not
the-
increasing the number of units
Yeah,
overall.
I mean, it is a little bit deceiving because really a townhouse is on its own individual lot, and so it really is considered a single family. But yeah, the difference between a townhouse and a non-connected single-family house.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Preston Lloyd with Williams Mullen on behalf of the applicant. I'm joined by Jonathan Rideout from H.H. Hunt Communities, and appreciate the opportunity to be back before you now that this project is coming out of the ground and moving forward, and it's one we continue to be very excited about. The application before you is prompted by what's become essentially a blending of the three conceptual plans that this planning commission and the board reviewed previously at the time of the original zoning case. As you can see before you, that approval had an overall maximum cap on density at 520 units. Within that density, as Mr. Rockacharlie astutely observed, there was a breakdown between townhome and single family, setting a cap in proffer number 8 at no more than 40% townhome. So if you were to max out the community with 520 homes, that would create an upper threshold in the number of townhomes at 208 units. The way that the property was ultimately designed, once the engineers got in there and really were able to evaluate the conditions of the site, it became a blend, as I mentioned, of those three different plans. So I'm scrolling through them rather quickly, but you can see as I go between A and B, there's a slight reconfiguration of where the townhomes versus the single-family lots are. And then again, at the top of the plan there between B and C, you can see some different permutations. Overall, similar plan, but as we explained at the time of the original zoning, we just didn't have enough information at that time to know exactly how it would pan out. Now we have that information, and we've come forward with a more specific plan. However, in doing so and making that combination, as you can see before you, taking a little bit from A, a little bit from B, a little bit from C, it's resulted in a mix that doesn't quite fit with what we thought would be the case. That mix, however, is fewer overall homes than we originally projected. Originally asked for 520, now we're looking at just 508. But within that 508, there are slightly more townhomes than single-family homes as we thought. So that's the essence of the request before you, to be able to modify number 8 in order to make sure that we're in technical conformance with the proffers. And we appreciate your consideration.
Any questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward, please state your name and address. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
It looks like these 17 more townhouses.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. There you go. Any further discussion?
Nope, I move that we recommend it for approval to the Board of Supervisors.
We have a first by
Second.
Mr. Myers, Mr. Rockacharlie. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mrs. Parker.
Yes, sir. Our last item for the public hearing tonight is in District 5, RZ 2019-00009, application by JSC Family LLC and Medical Development Ventures LLC, requesting a zoning reclassification of 8.056 acres from residential office RO with proffers to business limited B2 with proffers, to construct 5 office buildings totaling 37,800 square feet. The property is located at the intersection of Patterson Avenue and Creekmore Road on tax map number 63-1-0-174-0 and 63-29-0-A-1. The comprehensive plan designates this area as office, no retail.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Again, Tom Coleman, Principal Planner. As Ms. Barker introduced this project, it is a request to rezone 8 acres from an RO rezoning to a B2 zoning to construct office buildings. This is located in the eastern portion of the county. Looking at the subject property, the comprehensive plan recommendation is office, no retail, and there are a number of other designations in the near area. The properties to the east share that designation. The properties to the north are recommended for residential, which is associated with the Creekmore Park subdivision. Properties to the west recommended for recreation open space, which would be associated with the country club. And then there are some residential and flexible recommendations to the south. Looking at the zoning map, again, the subject property is zoned residential office. There are residential zonings to the north and south. To the west, there's some agricultural zoning that's associated again with the country club. To the east, there, if you get a little further to the east, the purple color is the industrial zoning that's associated with the West Creek Business Park. And look at the aerial photo again, sort of demonstrates the Creekmore Park subdivision, which is in close proximity to the property. The new project, multifamily development to the east, which is the Creekmore Place subdivision. You see the golf course there associated with the country club, and then the low-density development to the south across Passion Avenue. There was a community meeting in September. Approximately 40 people were there. Generally, there was opposition to this request, and the concerns included access to Creekmore Road, there was support for the property to retain the current RO zoning, and that the BT district would set a precedent for this area. Let me do this. I just want to, as I talk about the proposal, there was a couple of proposals that applied to the western parcel right there, so I'm just going to highlight the western parcel because this zoning request is for everything there in red. In 2008, there was a certificate of approval for that western parcel that was approved for 5 office buildings totaling about 25,000 square feet. The PUD was reviewed for the office buildings, and it did reach an approvable state, but the applicant never obtained final approval for that. In 2017, there was a proposed B1 district for that western piece to construct a 2-story, 48,000 square foot climate-controlled self-service storage facility and 2 5,000 square foot office buildings. That was a proposal for a B1 district. That request was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission, and it was withdrawn prior to the board hearing. To the east, where the multifamily developments being proposed, in 2014, there was a proposal for B2 zoning there for retail development. The Board of Supervisors denied that rezoning application. The property, as I mentioned earlier, is currently under development for the Creekmore Place, which is a multifamily development. As far as what they're proposing, there is a change from what was originally submitted and what appeared in the ad. What they are proposing is 6 buildings ranging in size from 6,000 to about 7,200 square feet, or about 3,700 square feet of area. They are proposing a medical, general, and professional offices. It would be limited to office uses. They are providing an 80-foot wide vegetated buffer with some supplemental plantings abutting the Creekmore Park subdivision, and the parking areas would be limited to the front and sides of the building. And the reason, part of the reason, I guess the primary reason for this request, they're limiting it to office uses, and the existing RO zoning is limited to office uses, but the existing RO zoning does limit the buildings to 5,000 square feet. The applicants do desire to build the buildings larger than 5,000 square feet. Just a couple to highlight what those changes were, just what was in the application and what showed in the ad. They increased the buildings from 5 to 6. They did decrease the overall square footage from closer to 38 to closer to 37, and the range of building sizes narrowed from previously they were looking at a largest building about 9,400 square feet. Now the largest building would be about 7,200 square feet. Looking at the conceptual site plan, just highlight a couple of areas. The current zoning and a couple of items that had showed up as concerns or points of discussion in previous cases was one of them was a 7-foot masonry wall that was going to be built between the previously proposed elements in the Creekmore Park subdivision. This really does not include the 7-foot wall masonry wall, but it does feature an 80-foot a tree save area. It's 80 feet from most of the length along Creekmore. It does, as it approaches the last two lots and as it approaches Creekmore Road, it does taper down closer to about 20 feet. And they would supplement that. Wherever the 80-foot buffer exists, they would have a 10-foot row of evergreen trees to provide an evergreen screen. And where it tapers down to a more narrow buffer or tree save area, that would be a double row of evergreens. And also, with this site plan, the parking would be limited to the front and sides of building. Previous proposals did include parking to the rear. So those are probably the two bigger changes from previous proposals. The applicant did offer a number of proffers. The first one would tie the site to the conceptual plan that you previously saw. The second proffer would require that 80-foot tree save area be retained adjacent to the Creekmore Park subdivision. The third one requires that supplemental planting, and again, it would be the single row of evergreen trees within the 10-foot buffer that is shown on the conceptual plan, and then a double row of evergreens within that 20-foot buffer and that sort of tapering down area. And those trees would be planted at a minimum of 6 feet in height at planting. The fourth one would require the parking areas to be located in the front and side of buildings. The fifth one would have a 50-foot front landscaping setback from Patterson Avenue. The sixth one just says that the buffers shall be retained, except for the potential for utility or easements that would have to run generally diagonally to the or perpendicularly, excuse me, to the buffer. And then the last one is the use. It does limit the uses to the professional offices as set forth in the ordinance. And that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. With regard to what they have today in the RO, what was approved previously, was that proposed with parking front and rear?
That included parking in the rear.
And what was the buffer?
Pardon?
What was the buffer between it and the residence?
I don't recall the width of the buffer.
But they had a wall.
The wall was a part of the feature
Okay.
of that.
And so by right, they have that today, is that correct?
Right.
So 5 buildings up to 25,000 square feet with that. And then we're looking at now, let's just say to round numbers, 37,000 square feet, another building parking in the front only with an 80-foot buffer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Myers?
I'm missing something. There's 5 buildings, but on this illustration, it appears to be 6.
Increasing it to 6.
Yeah, they're increasing it to
Okay.
6 from what they had today with 5. I was just restating the buffer, the building count.
We don't have a plan.
And the parking where it was.
So the two largest buildings that were about 9,000 square feet are going to be 7,200.
Correct.
So we don't have a plat of that change.
That is shown, what's on the revised,
we
I
don't
failed to
have that.
mention,
It's page 2. You got it.
Good evening, gentlemen. You should have the revised black line proffers on the dais, and the second page of that does show the revised conceptual plan with the 6 buildings.
Okay. When the Creekmore residential development was started, was this land still RO?
those properties were rezoned at the same time. So the zoning occurred at the same time.
So when the housing development was under construction and being sold, this was RO?
Correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Coleman?
Did I hear you correctly say that it was actually more, it's approved for more square footage now than what they're asking for?
What was approved under the RO development was 25,000 square feet.
Okay.
So what they're proposing right now is the 37,000 square feet.
Somewhere it said that it was 37.8, and now it's 37.2.
Correct. There was a change to the conceptual plan for when the application was originally submitted, and then what went out in the ad. So they reconfigured it a little bit, and just wanted to highlight.
It
that
hasn't
there was-
already been approved for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Coleman?
Is this a typo on here?
It might be. Check it. See, compare.
Ms. Parker, could you read the, could you read it again?
Yeah, it's different, yeah, that's correct.
Read the advertisement.
Please,
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
would you?
thank you.
District 5, RZ 2019-00009, application by JSC Family LLC and Medical Development Ventures LLC, requesting a zoning reclassification of 8.056 acres from residential office RO with proffers to business limited B2 with proffers, to construct 5 office buildings totaling 37,800 square feet. The property is located at the intersection of Patterson Avenue and Creekmore Road on tax map number 63-1-0-174-0 and 63-29-0-A-1. The comprehensive plan designates this area as office, no retail.
Well, is it really 5 or 6?
That was the area of confusion, I
When
think.
the application was submitted, it was for 5, and through some discussions and some proffer changes, they resubmitted a conceptual plan. So the conceptual plan that you have before you is what is being proposed. It's the 6 buildings.
We don't have the text of that. We just
Yeah,
have
but,
the plan.
but shouldn't it have been put on here?
On the advertisement
Yeah.
is the concern.
Well, generally, since the number of buildings is informational, the square footage, they're actually reducing the amount of square footage, and so that is not a substantial change for the ad purposes.
If I may add a little bit of clarification, the ad, as you know, is published several weeks before tonight's meeting. So the ad can't be changed, but there is a policy in your bylaws for an applicant to submit revised proffers. They have to be submitted the Tuesday before your Thursday meeting. I believe they were submitted on Monday. So the black lined additional sheet you have here is the revised proffers. But
Just as
we don't change the packet once
Just
it's
as.
been. Yes, sir.
Correct.
So the difference is the 5 buildings versus the 6 buildings and the decrease of the 600 approximately square feet.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. All right. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Gentlemen, my name's Darvin Satterwhite, 3013 River Road West. I'm here for the applicants tonight. I have with me Mr. Jason Wilkins, who has done our site plan that you have before you. I understand the commission does have them. I have copies if you need them. They are colored, if that would help you in any way. I certainly would. It is. It just has the color on it that may make it easier to pick up. I'll be glad to.
Got me, yeah, fast.
Yes, I do, sir.
Like,
Would you provide a copy, Ms. Parker, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, what I've just handed to you is in fact the slides for our PowerPoint tonight. So the first slide is actually the first page there. I've simply turned it to the page that would show that plan that you're been referring to. Mr. Coleman's done a very good job of telling you where it is and what it is and the zoning around it, so I'm not going to repeat that, but we do have an 8-acre total parcel that we're dealing with here. And I know this was also on Mr. Coleman's presentation, but it is important. I want you to be able to see that as well, because this entire parcel right now is heavily wooded. They are mature trees. They are not, for the most part, not evergreens. I will tell you that, but they are very large, very mature trees. And you can see just to the north, as has been pointed out, there's Creekmore Park subdivision. Those residential dwellings that border our project, they too have fairly dense trees as well on their property. So just for the purposes of understanding the topo and the lay of the land, that's what we have with regard to the trees. And I think that's important because what you have as the approved plan that was approved in the past, it's not before you tonight, gets rid of a lot of those trees. And that is an important part because the plan that we're submitting is quite different than that. This now, I'm not trying to confuse you, but this is what was rezoned in 2002 to get to the RO zoning that we have now. That's the conceptual plan that was submitted with that application. I've used that instead of the actual POD that was approved later because that's so detailed it's hard to see on a PowerPoint presentation, but it is consistent with what you have there. So you can see Creekmore Park, where it is right there behind it, and the proposed office buildings are up front, as you can see there. There's the essential and crucial feature of this type of approval, though, is what you see right along there. All of that is rear zoning, and for your purposes over here. All your parking, rather, is in the rear there. All right. Now, the entranceway, pretty much the same as what we proposed there on Creekmore. So that really hasn't changed. The entranceway on Patterson, essentially the same location. But what is different is what I've just pointed out. All the parking being behind the buildings means that those trees that I showed in the previous slide are going to go away for the parking. And the only buffer that you have under the existing approved plan is a 25-foot buffer, which is behind a 7-foot wall. Now, it's hard to see it on looking down on it on a flat projection like that, but we'll take a little different look at it in just a minute. All right, this is the plan that I've just handed out to you. Granted, it does have 6 buildings. I want to explain why it's 6 buildings, but it's less square footage. When we first filed our zoning application, it was 37,800 square feet. The difficulty with that from perspective of making this blend in with the neighborhood is that you had buildings under the original file plan that were 9,000 square feet. And I recall at our community meeting, we showed sketches of what those type of buildings would look like. They're much taller than what we're proposing here. So what we've tried to do is scale our buildings back. Right now we have 5 6,000 square feet and 1 7,200 square feet building, which is allowing us to get our roof lines a little lower than what we had before, to take advantage of what I want to show you on this screening that we're trying to achieve. So there are where our buildings are now, what we're proposing. Behind those buildings will be an evergreen screen that we will be putting in place. Now it's just one row of evergreen, 6-foot tall, 10-foot on center. So we've got that. We'll be putting that in place. But these two lots here, 35 and 36, we believe, and the county staff, I think, has pointed this out to us, that those two lots will need some additional screening because they're not going to have the advantage of this 80-foot tree buffer that I'm going to show you in just a second. So that right behind lot 35 and 36, there'll be a 20-foot wide tree buffer, 2 rows of evergreens, 10 feet on center, initial planting 6 foot high. Here, along the rear, and recall that's where the parking lot was under the old plan. Where you see those red arrows there are trees there now. That's going to be the tree save buffer. We're not getting into any of those trees. All those trees stay in place, whereas under the old plan, virtually all of them except 25 feet go away. We're keeping 80 foot there, and we got another 10 feet behind those. We'll have a 50-foot landscape along the front. I think that's pretty much over the overlay district. Your landscaping along the front would be there. 125-foot building setback pretty much is standard, is what you would have in that district. This, I think, gives you a better view of what is happening with the buffer. All right, if you look at that top schematic, as you can see, the arrows point to Creekmore Park subdivision to the left, and then Patterson to the right. So that's the trees right in there. That 80-foot tree save area is right there. All right, so the one's on the property line. The one is right behind our building. Make sure we're right here. This is one of our medical office buildings here. That's that 10-foot tree buffer right there that I talked about that we'd plant. This is existing mature trees, none of which will come down under the proffers that we are asking you to consider tonight. And these are, is a schematic of the homes back on Creekmore. All right. This lower sketch is really looking back toward Patterson. So this is our office building here, and what you'd have Patterson. This is Patterson Highway here with the vehicles potentially going up and down the road. So that's what we're looking at. All right, that's what we have proffered. That's what we have under our conceptual plan that we presented to you tonight. All right, under this drawing, what I'm trying to at least show to you is a comparison between what we're proposing and what is existing under the earlier approved plan. The top one is what I've just shown you, the 80-foot tree save area, all those trees in place, the 10-foot additional planted trees. But the lower one, those trees go away. And essentially what you have to replace it is a 7-foot wall. What will happen, your grade will, I mean, you'll have some fill here, so the wall's going to be from grade up, but it's essentially a 7-foot wall from that grade up, but you can't, all your parking would be there under the old plan. These trees come down. So we think what we're proposing under the proffers and the conceptual plan that we're showing to you tonight is a tremendous improvement on the screening and buffering between this project that you have before you this evening and anything that was approved in the past. Now, I mentioned we were trying to scale our buildings down so they wouldn't be quite as high. I know that some of you were at the community meeting and we had our schematics. The buildings were a little higher up. The ridge line here is approximately 25 feet in height. I think under your ordinance in B2, they could be 35 feet. Our buildings, what we're trying to achieve is a lower profile for those buildings. So it'd be about 25 feet in height. This would be the typical design that we're trying to achieve. Now, On those proffers, in the staff report that was presented to you, and of course I've read that and seen it like everyone else, staff expressed concerns, and we have gone through each one. It's part of the reasons, and it's normal in the zoning process, to have to submit amended proffers to address staff concerns. We've addressed each one of them that presented. That 20-foot additional screening on those two lots was mentioned in the plan. Something needed to be done there. This is what the county staff had recommended. I think it's a good recommendation, and we put that in the proffers. So we've got that in place. We had a proffer that we've eliminated because it pointed out in the staff report that it just didn't pass muster with the county. We had asked to have some ability to go on our own now, to go into that tree save area if we needed to for utility lines and so forth. We've removed that. We can't do that. The only thing could be done in POD, which is fairly traditional with the county and the POD process, is if something like that were to happen, it would be so minimal, it takes county approval, not our initiative on that. So we've adopted the language that was suggested by the county to address the concern that was presented in the staff report. The staff report, and I know this came up as well at the community meeting, is discussion about whether or not you could have a no U-turn sign put there at the crossover of Creekmore Road and River Road. So what's happening, people are coming out of West Creek. They can't get on to 288 South without heading west. And what they're doing is they're coming along and they're coming to this particular crossover that's right in front of Creekmore Park, and they're making their U-turns. And the Board of Supervisors, I know, as early as February of last year, of this year rather, had made inquiries to VDOT as to whether or not a no U-turn sign could be put there. And if there's enough traffic and enough danger and so forth, under the VDOT regulations, that is something that would typically be done. But as the staff report comments on, and I think this is page 91 of your packet, to quote from the staff report, it says, U-turn restrictions were reviewed, this came out of VDOT, part of that review, were reviewed for Creekmore Road and River Road and are not warranted. It comes right out of the staff report, and that is perfectly accurate. So I know we heard it at the community meeting. I expect you will hear it tonight, that is a terrible situation. If it is, it's not one that warrants even a no U-turn sign there. And that's not me, that's the county staff and VDOT who regulates that type of thing. Also in your staff report, I mean, right now we've got 8 acres sitting there, and on that 8 acres you got trees, and that's all you got. That's your tax base on that. We would like to have this property developed into a nice office park, consistent with what we've shown on this conceptual plan, and I think the staff report picks that up, and the quote from the report is, this development would represent a sizable private investment in this area, which affects your tax base, which affects your employment opportunities, which affects your services, and medical offices in here, services to the area of the whole and to Creekmore Park as well. It provides those things in this area and provides additional connections for the Tuckahoe Creek Service District. These are all positive financial impacts, and that's part of what your zoning is to achieve, trying to get the highest and best use of property consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, as the county staff report states, this area is designated as an area of office, no retail. We don't want any retail either. And that's why we have proffered that the only permissible uses within this development would be professional offices, thereby eliminating the retail. So what we are proposing to you tonight is completely consistent with the county comprehensive plan, as the staff report is indicating there. So that is our project. That's what we're proposing. That's how we've tried to address the screening challenges on this property, and I think we have. I think we've offered to you a significantly improved plan, and we would ask for your favorable consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Got a couple of questions. The plan that you had showing the elevation between Patterson and the buildings, do you plan on basically eliminating all the existing woods there and landscape it with bushes and trees, or any of those existing wooded areas stay?
Let me back up to that if I could.
And the 50-foot landscaping setback.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're talking about on the Patterson side?
Yeah,
Mr.
I know we have a
Buckton?
landscaping buffer required by the overlay district.
I
Do you
know-
intend to leave any of the existing trees there, the wooded area?
Along
Patterson?
obviously, we've got to, take out our parking out front. I mean, that would go, but to the extent trees are there that don't interfere with what we have to use for our parking, it would only make good economic sense for us to do that, because it's going to make the park look better and potentially less expensive to clear. So we would like to preserve as many of the trees as we could, even on the Patterson side, consistent with the POD process that we'll be going through as well.
There's no
with the
proffer
county.
for that, right?
It's no proffer, but I think the B2 ordinance states that, your open air, your landscape areas, if it's a tree caliper that's 6 inches or more caliper, it should be maintained, so.
The other question is, how important is the exit out onto Creekmore Road?
Well, if you don't have the exit out on Creekmore Road, I mean, what you're going to do when you come out is what I just described. You're going to have to go down to, if you want to head east, you're going to have to go down to River Road and do a U-turn there and come back. It's 4/10 of a mile, just to use the county GIS scale on that, 4/10 of a mile from our Patterson Avenue entrance to where that River Road U-turn would be. So, I mean, that's the difference. I mean, we wouldn't be able to make that crossover and go back down. It would be about another half mile for everybody in there.
Is that important from a marketing standpoint?
I think it is, yes, sir. Well, I think it's important from a marketing standpoint, but the reason it's important from a marketing standpoint is because it's important from a functionality standpoint. People would obviously prefer to cross at that crossover than have to drive down another half mile to make that turn.
Well, the reason I ask is that if you're coming off like River Road and you're heading east, you have to go down to Creekmore Road, make a U-turn and come back, or turn into that area. So you're sort of trading one for the other.
But I guess what I'm saying is when you come out, if you bear with me 1 second. We'll go back to that first, I think it's helpful, that first slide we had, if I can get you back there. Because I think any way you do that, though, you're going to end up coming out and having to go, if you only had the one entrance in, that we can see right here, when you come out, I mean, this is what's problematic at West Creek. You can see if you come out, you can't get on here. So now these people are going down here, coming around and getting on like that. But if we can't come out here and do this crossover and come down, I mean, their only way is to come out here go down, turn around, and come back down and get on here. The difference is from this point at our entrance, from that point to here is 4/10 of a mile. So the difference is coming out, which is a markability and functional difference, is coming out here and going down as opposed to driving what's almost a mile and coming back around. That's the difference.
It isn't, well, Mosaic's gonna generate a lot of traffic coming out of there also, once that gets developed. So it's gonna be even more traffic heading west, making a U-turn to go back.
And I'm not denying, I mean, the area, I mean, we all know, even without Mosaic, we all know that area is growing, and it's certainly, and I'm sure under controlled circumstances, the planning commission would want that to happen, because it's part of the zoning growth of the area. But right now, as we stand, in point of fact, this intersection doesn't even merit, according to VDOT, a no U-turn sign. That's where we are. I mean, laugh about it all you want. That's exactly what we got. I mean, at some point, maybe you have lights at different places, but that is at some point we're dealing with today. And where we are today is it doesn't even warrant a no U-turn sign. That is what your staff is telling you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Centerway?
I have one, yeah. Can you go back to the elevation where the trees are left?
Yes, sir.
And as you're going to it, my question is, are the elevations in that schematic, are they accurate?
I would have to defer to the gentleman who put them. That's Mr. Wilkins. I can never get past these arrows.
Yes, that one right there. So are the elevations accurate of the existing buildings that are in the subdivision versus the buildings that you all are applying to put in?
That was my intention, but again, I would have to have the gentleman who prepared it. I know that was his intent, but.
Good evening. My name is Jason Wilkins with Townside Engineering. The building that's shown as the proposed office, I'll be honest with you, that building itself is not, the height of it is not accurate for the office. My intention was to show something spatially from a distance perspective. And a lot of the work that the applicant's done with the architectural elevations, I have not been a part of that. So the height of it is not accurate.
And in his defense, that would have been done when we had the 9,000 square foot building.
I'm not asking about the height of the building. I'm asking about the elevation of the base of the new building versus so if, is this?
The ground elevations?
Yes.
They are. They're relatively accurate.
So it looks like the first floor elevation of the houses in the subdivision are going to be almost level with the floor of the building. So when they're looking straight out, it's not going to be, unless they're looking up, they're not going to see these buildings. Is that correct?
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, so looking straight, so if you're inside of the home looking out of the window, this building is going to be 10 feet or 13 feet higher than the bottom of that building would be.
Yep.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. And with the 80-foot vegetation as well.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, just behind the buildings, I would imagine you're just going to put a small road back in there for trash removal, repairs, and that kind of stuff?
There is some space in there. There's not much, though.
Is that a swale?
It's a swale in there in that drawing.
In the
In that
elevation.
drawing we were just looking at is a pretty strong swale behind the buildings.
On the, yeah, that's right, on the profile.
It is.
The elevation.
But very little back there. I mean, we were trying to dedicate the majority of that area to screening and bringing our parking level with the side areas of those buildings. And we haven't reserved much area to do anything else back there to try to preserve the,
So your trash removal will have to be up front
I think you can actually see it on that plan.
between the buildings?
Yeah, it's right there between, I believe. I gave mine to Ms. Parker, but I think that's where it is.
Yeah,
on
they-
there.
they're-
Between the groups of buildings.
Okay, so it looks like
Yeah.
no pavement behind the buildings at all.
That's correct, yes,
Very
sir.
little, yeah,
Okay.
in
Yes, sir.
between. Any questions for Mr. Satterwhite? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Coleman, can we do a review real quick before we open up the public hearing, what was approved previously with respect to the plan with access?
2003?
I don't want to misspeak on the,
2002.
So, sir, is it, well, it's,
so we had, it was approved for the entrance to Patterson Avenue into Creekmore?
yeah, it was approved for the office building, the parking to be in the back, and this was highly conceptual. As you can tell, I think you had an earlier question about what the distance was, and I'll direct your attention to the screen again. We don't have a measurement right there, but it's evident that that's much closer, at least the parking is much closer
Correct.
than the 80-foot buffer that's being provided.
Right.
And that, hence, that would be one of the reasons for having the 7-foot masonry wall, would to be provide that solid opaque screen. And then there still are the two accesses, the one access onto Creekmore Road and the access onto Patterson.
And was there anything stated on that, the buffer between lot 35 and 36, is it in the
no.
previous approval?
Just the masonry wall.
Just the masonry wall?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any questions for Mr. Coleman while we have him?
One other the end of Creedmoor Road right near dead ends. The development behind it, if that road continued on back, what is the zoning back in there? Do you know?
Actually, it might be on here. Does this show better?
Yeah, all that.
So this is all developed, and this is their homes back in here. And when you get up here, you're getting into the country club. So that's substantially fully developed.
Would that road ever be extended back into there?
I mean, I can never say never, but this is what's existing right here, and this is the existing golf course. So I think it's fair to say that road would not be extended as long as the golf course is there.
I just want to be reasonably confident it's not going to add any more traffic to Creedmoor Road.
It looks like this is fully developed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. That's right. Thank you, Mr. Coleman. We'll now open the public hearing. Please come forward, state your name and address. And let's try to keep some time here.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Bruce Corrali. I'm the president of the Creekmore Park Homeowners Association. I have a petition here. We have 131 signatures. All of the people that signed this are fully aware of all these details. So let me read the petition for you, please. It's the petition against rezoning application RZ 2019-00009. As concerned citizens and homeowners of Goochland County, we, the undersigned, are expressing our strong opposition to zoning application RZ 2019-0009, submitted by JSC Family LLC and Medical Development Ventures LLC, that seeks to rezone property owned by Creekmore Group LLC and Michael and Laura Fields on Patterson Avenue and Creekmore Road from RO to B2. The proposed rezoning is not consistent with the Goochland County 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which designates the property as office, no retail. The designation specifically states that uses should have minimal impacts on adjoining properties and that this classification generally corresponds to the RO zoning district. RO zoning preserves the intent of the plan's designation with its protection of the integrity of residential property and uses from potentially adverse effects of adjoining development. The proposed spot zoning and development offer no such protection. In fact, they would inflict significant adverse effects upon adjoining and neighborhood properties. The B2 zoning request on adjacent property in 2014 was denied, and the B1 zoning request submitted in 2017 for a large portion of the current property was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission prior to withdrawal of the application. There have been no changes to the immediate area that would warrant or justify the requested spot zoning of this property. We urge you to please vote against this proposed rezoning. Thank you very much. So I don't know if I can present this to you.
You can hand it to Ms. Parker. Thank you.
And Mr. Crowley, can you please state your address?
It's 411 Regina Lane.
Thank you.
So give that to her.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make a personal comment, and that's just that from a traffic standpoint, I guess it's a little upsetting that we never got a U-turn sign there. With this new development, it would produce, at full development, perhaps 1,400 new vehicles in and out of that area every day, Monday through Friday. That's a lot of extra traffic on an area that's already considered to us to be dangerous. I have 9 letters here from folks who couldn't be here. I don't know if you'd allow me to read these or if I just should give those to her as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Tony Cleveland. I live at 28 Cobblestone Circle, Unit 4, and I am reading a letter that I am presenting on behalf of Richmond Country Club. The general manager wanted to be here tonight and could not attend. I have been an active member of Richmond Country Club since the early 2000s. So with that said, this is what he writes. Members of the Planning Commission, Richmond Country Club supports development that is within the parameters of the long-term plan and the notion of medical services coming to our community. However, we would like to express our concerns in reference to this application about the impacts to our members and neighbors regarding traffic patterns that will be created and the precedent set by deviating from the current long-term plan. And I think that's important. I emphasize the deviating from the current long-term plan. We are concerned about additional traffic from this development at the club entrance along Patterson Avenue and would like to see a remedy proposed to reduce the dangers of accidents. We appreciate the Commission's careful consideration on this matter. Sincerely, John Kelly, General Manager, Richmond Country Club.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cleveland.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Hawk. I live at 274 Creekmore Place, which is the condominium development that is to the right as you enter into Creekmore Road there. We moved, my wife Debbie and I moved into that first condominium back when it was first built. It's been about a year and 10 months. I'm opposed to the proposal to rezone the acreage in question from RO to B2, irrespective of any proffers that are offered. Before I get into my reasons, I'd like for you to use your imagination and think back to 2002 when that original plan was established. There were no homes back and behind there. There was no condominiums to the right. There was no real opposition. I would think if you look at the tour de force that's here today, if today that was initially proposed, there would be a lot of opposition to that original RO. What my reasons are is, first of all, I'm going to have 65,000 square feet of asphalt and buildings about 100 yards from my back deck. Hundreds of people I don't know coming and going every day, hundreds of cars and trucks coming in and out of the parking lot every day. potential flooding because of this 65,000 square feet of asphalt, potential light pollution, potential noise pollution, overwhelming, and I'm telling you it's overwhelming, vehicle congestion at the crossover intersection, especially at the critical rush hours. You have to be there to appreciate it. Furthermore, this will be, in my view, a scar on the beautiful Goochland Scenic Highway. Had a nice drive out here this evening. It was dark, it was raining, but I didn't see a lot of glaring lights. I didn't see a lot of buildings along the side. It was quite pleasant. Those of you who live out in this part of the county, you're quite fortunate that you don't have the encroaching urban sprawl coming towards you any time in the near future. For us, it's right on our shoulders right now. Another reason is that, as Bruce stated and that everyone knows, in the county's comprehensive plan, this is RO. I think everybody accepts that. We really don't want to push it any farther beyond that. And also my intention when I moved here a year and 10 months ago was not to live right next door to a business. And that's about what's ready to happen, and we're unhappy about that. I'd like to read a few selected facts from the West Creek website. West Creek consists of approximately 800 acres developed, 1,700 acres undeveloped. Home to HCA. Zoned M1-C, which includes hospitality, light industrial, medical office.
Time.
Thank you. May I present this to her?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Larry Lane. I live at 409 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. As a homeowner in that area adjacent to this, I am in strong opposition to this zoning request. My family moved from Enrico to Goochland to escape the lights, the hustle and bustle, the development, the traffic, and I've invested my life savings into this property. The comprehensive plan reads loud and clear that it would serve to preserve and protect my investment. In fact, it's clear that it would grow my investment. The comprehensive plan, chapter 2, land use, says to have balanced development that contributes to the welfare of the community and preserves its rural character. Had this property been zoned anything different than RO when I purchased it in 2015, I would not have purchased it. So therefore, there's a transactional agreement by the 2035 comprehensive plan that if you change this, it's going to break that promise. The zoning change will have significant impact on the character and quality of our neighborhood. Light pollution, water pollution, the elevation is correct. That neighborhood is going to be in a bathtub, and you put that big parking lot in there, it's going to be a mess. It's a mess now. The proposed project is on top of this well-established neighborhood. Our properties are finally starting to recover from the economic recession. This will only drop our prices even more. The plan also talks about guiding development to the village areas. Put it on Broad Street. Put it in West Creek. Put it in Oak Hill Estate East that we just heard about. That's where your growth spurts are. The comprehensive plan states that designated growth areas should be desirable and attractive places to live and work. These places should be destinations for new residents and residential development. Balance is the key, as you well know. When I come through Route 6, it is very scenic byway. It's been beautiful. I've seen it since 1976 when I moved here. It's what folks think about when they think about Goochland. The charm, the future residential growth is on that corridor. I strongly oppose this change. It is not in the best interest of the adjacent properties. It's not in the best interest of Goochland. It's not the Goochland thing to do. Please do not support it. Thank you.
My name is Brian Kennedy, and I live at 283 Creekmore Place with Jerry. Not with Jerry, but you live with Mary. I live with Mary, but along with Jerry in the condo. But you know, one of the biggest reasons that we chose to move, my wife and I chose to move to Goochland, is the rural character of the county, and I'm opposed to this change because, not just because of this particular building, but I'm afraid of what effect it might have on future rezonings of property. And would like not to see this turn into another short pump, which is an absolute disaster. The other thing I would say about the traffic is, Jerry's correct. I mean, the staff doesn't live there. If you lived there, you would see at rush hour, it's almost impossible to get out of there without causing some kind of dangerous situation in the way you drive. And I'm a little concerned about fire and safety, emergency services being able to get into that area when they need to. So that's just where I am. Thank you.
There's a front row available if anyone would like to line up. They're more than welcome to come to the front row and have a seat. For sake of time, we want to
Good
hear
evening.
everybody, whether pro or con.
Hi, my name's Jenny Peritano. I live in Creekmore Park at 313 Victoria Way. I have a letter here that I'd like to read from my neighbors at 302 Victoria Way, Jeffrey Newton and Russell Brock. Dear Goochland representatives, we regret not being here in person to advocate for a no vote to rezoning, on Patterson Ave behind the Creekmore Park development. When we chose Goochland County to reside, we did it because we wanted a more rural lifestyle that Goochland County offers, yet with accessibility to Richmond. We found that at Creekmore Park. At the time, we were told that the 2.5-acre property behind our home at 302 Victoria Way, when developed, would be made into a small physicians-type office building, and that a substantial barrier would be built to protect our backyard. We purchased our lot on a specific reliance on the current rezoning plan. Currently, our backyard is home to wildlife. We've observed deer, wild turkey, raccoon, woodpeckers, and the like. Yes, the country life of Goochland. Now you're asking us to accept a development that would not only destroy this habitat entirely, but change to become a traffic entrance for a large development mere feet from our home. This development would create significant traffic problems and volume at the entrance to our neighborhood. This development would change our backyard view to a concrete jungle parking lot and an entrance for cars, creating additional backup to an entrance already stressed with the U-turn traffic from West Creek and Patterson. It would be grossly unfair to change the zoning after we have built and improved our home over the last 15 years. This is not Goochland. I am a registered nurse serving this community for over 15 years. I have volunteered at the Goochland Free Clinic. My partner, Russell Brock, MD, has also served this community as a physician and veteran. With the building of Bon Secours Medical Facilities and Sheltering Arms at Short Pump, we feel this is still a good location for a small physician's office building. We strongly feel any entrance should be designed from inception to have minimal or no impact on Creekmore Road. We implore you to keep Goochland as it should be, a welcoming, safe place we can call home. We strongly support a no vote on rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Larry Gervin. I live at 416 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. I stand opposed to the rezoning request. In 2014, my neighbors and I stood before you opposed to the B2 zoning request in the northeast corner of Creekmore Road and Route 6. That request was denied, I think, unanimously by this commission. And we now have villas under development that are appropriately placed along Route 6 with proper buffers. In 2017, I again stood before you opposed to the B1 zoning request for much of the same property that we have before us tonight. That was denied. The 2035 comprehensive plan developed by the county's professional planning staff and subsequently approved by the county just 4 years ago reflect the strategic thinking for the future development of the county. It provides appropriate areas for industrial, business, agricultural, residential development. It also provides proper buffers for these areas. The B2 zoning request is located in one of those buffer areas. The area zoned RO that is designed to protect the surrounding residential communities. There is no need to force this type of business activity on this piece of property. There are many appropriate zone properties in the area to locate larger professional office buildings. There is no need to make this exception to the strategic thinking that went on in developing the comprehensive plan. My main concern, and tonight I was coming out of my subdivision on Creekmore Road, and it took me 15 to 20 minutes to get out. I was 6 cars in line. When I got up to Patterson, you then have to be, who's going to be the most aggressive to get out and make a left turn? We've already had 1 accident at that location. The current rezoning, the current RO zoning would permit, under the original one that was approved, 25,000 square feet of professional office buildings. This one, and I, like you, got the news tonight, even with the reduction, would be about a 50% increase in square footage. To me, that means more traffic than what the RO zoning would permit. 54 or 50% more increased square footage from what was originally thought is a lot. And that's why I hope you deny the request before you tonight.
Thank you. Next.
Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Steve Dowdy. I live at 639 Monacan Drive. I believe I have an overhead of the intersection that I'd like to address. I speak tonight from a little bit different perspective. I live behind Richmond Country Club, and I appreciate the concerns of my neighbors over in Creekmore that have been previously stated. If we could open that the first picture there, I think. All right, I'll be talking about the picture up on the top left. That is the intersection of River Road and Patterson Avenue, or Route 6. 27 of the 131 signees to the petition use the entrance going into Richmond Country Club to get out from their properties. Richmond Country Club has several hundred members that use that intersection. You can see, looking at the intersection, the top left, that it's not straight across. It's kind of at an angle, which causes you to have to look back over your shoulder to make sure that nothing's coming in all of the various ways that traffic can approach that intersection. Second slide over on the right, the little red marks are the different ways that cars can approach that intersection. I counted up to 10 of those. I think there are probably more than that, but at least 10. So cars can come in 10 different directions through that intersection. If you go west on Route 6, which would be down to the left, there's a dip in the road there that will hide a car that is coming west on Route 6. It will also hide the trucks coming out of the quarry that are filled with gravel. If those cars are speeding and you try to come across that intersection, they will be on top of you before you are able to get across the road, and that happens on a daily basis. The trucks, of course, take a long time to stop, and they too can be on top of you when you're trying to cross that intersection. Generic to what's going on with our question tonight is the third slide on the bottom, where we would have U-turns being made by traffic coming out of the new offices that are proposed. And of course, as we've already discussed, there are 2 entrances, one on Creekmore and one on Patterson. But the main entrance is going to be off of Patterson. We expect a number of those 1,000 cars a day to come west on Route 6 to make a U-turn at this intersection to go back east to 288 or to the greater Richmond area. So we are concerned with those U-turns. We think that those U-turns complicate the traffic already.
Time.
That is an issue there. Second, and I heard about the time, my second issue is the B2 zoning, which would be the first B2 zoning west of Route 288. That will open up business zoning on this area. As already stated tonight, Goochland Patterson Avenue is a gateway. It's a scenic bypass into Goochland County. The B2 zoning would open the floodgates for other developers to come before you and ask for business. We don't want another Centerville on Patterson Avenue. And I urge you to vote against this rezoning this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward, state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes.
My name is Ron Gift, and I live at 271 Creekmore Place. And I'm here to also echo the comments of the Creekmore community and their points that have been made. I can only talk about the traffic as I've experienced it over the last year that we've been here. And to put this new project into place would only exacerbate the bad situation that we currently have. And I fear that the results of impatient motorists trying to go east or west on Patterson Avenue would create serious problems. But with that said, I'm going to focus a little bit on the spirit of the Goochland County Comprehensive Plan. We'd like to believe that you folks have an interest in our welfare. After all, the comprehensive plan that Virginia has set forth talks about the coordinated and harmonious development of the territory, and has the general welfare or interest of the welfare of the inhabitants. We do not believe that this project promotes that type of harmonious development. It is the best interest in the best interest or general welfare for the residents of Creekmore. If approved, what comfort can a potential homeowner have who comes in here, looks at an RO rating, knowing that the zoning plan has ghosted in the background, buyer beware? Thank you.
Next.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name's Peter Yaffe. I'm a resident of Creekmore Place and live at 405 Regina Lane. Many of my neighbors and friends have brought up the comprehensive plan this evening. I'm going to touch upon that and leave the other speaking points to many of the other residents. Again, we all know the comprehensive plan with the RO zoning plans and is very thoughtful in its approach to that transitional zone. And a point I'd like to make, the applicant through this filing is doing nothing more than requesting unjustified and special treatment that benefits them and undermines the pre-existing rights and uses of the adjacent property owners, including residents of Creekmore Road, Creekmore Place, Creekmore Park, and additional neighbors and friends that live in the vicinity of RCC. This is nothing more than a textbook case of spot zoning in the narrow and unjustified nature of the benefit to the property owner and to the detriment of the general land use plan and public goals. We've heard a lot about being precedent setting. I'd rather have us set a precedent and work together as a broader community for the long-term good of Goochland. And this filing violates that spirit. So in closing, I'd like to ask the Planning Commission to decline this application for B2. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman and rest of the commission. My name is Keith Walden. I live at 309 Victoria Way in Creekmore Park. My neighbors and all have talked about a lot of concerns, so I won't go back over those again. But what hangs in my mind in looking at this development is the fact, as was said before, the amount of asphalt and all. Less than 2 years ago, we had, I guess, what was a microburst or whatever in the area, and it dropped 4 inches of rain in less than, I I think about an hour, hour and a half. At that point in time, the aftermath of that, we had 12 inches of water above the road where the creek comes through. We also had, I have a picture, I wish I just got back in town today, so submit a picture where it looks like there are Class 3 rapids running in front of one of my neighbor's homes. So my concern is with the drainage of this development, and I see there's a collection pond that's really close to where the creek runs through. And my question is the water from that collection pond going to eventually run into the creek? And if that's the case, that is a big problem. Secondly, as mentioned before, is the U-turn situation. At any given time between 4 and 6 p.m., there are 10 plus cars waiting to make a left turn. Now that left turn lane is not that large. So then you got where people wanting to make a left turn are backed up into the left passing lane on Patterson Avenue. So for myself and coming home, I almost had a situation there that was the cause of an accident of somebody jumping in front of me as I was slowing down to make a turn into Creekmore because they wanted to get out of that lane and to move because traffic in the passing lane had become to a complete stop, okay? That is not a safe condition for Patterson Avenue, where people are running 55 miles an hour, okay? Thirdly, it was mentioned about the tax base. When I look at that, tax base of Creekmore is over $25 million. That does not include Creekmore, the Villa homes, and the rest of the residents. So I hope as you go forward, you keep in mind us and our investment that we've made in Goochland. And I've been here for 12 years and have enjoyed it and enjoyed the peace and quiet. And would like to stay here a little bit longer. Okay? Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Jim Blow. I live at 281 Creekmore Place, and I'd like to oppose B2. In 2017, I retired from the United States Army after 28 years of service. I could have taken my VA loan and gone anywhere, but I chose Goochland to buy my first home with my wife, and I chose it because of the rural character of the area. I chose it because the way it was zoned, because I like the nice quiet surroundings, and for 28 years, I didn't get to pick where I wanted to live. I went where I was ordered to go and did what I was told. So this, I intended to be my first and last home. So I chose very carefully, and I chose Goochland County because I love the rural character of the area, and I'd very much like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Louise Gervin, and I live at 416 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. I stand in opposition to this rezoning request to B2. Here we are again. On two previous occasions, as you already have heard, this body received requests to rezone parcels of land adjacent to the intersection of Creekmore Road and Route 6. The Massey request in 2014 and the Creekmore Group in 2017. In both cases, this body voted to recommend for denial these requests to the Board of Supervisors. The reason cited by this body for opposing them was that B zoning was incompatible with the county's intention for the development of this land as set forth in the comprehensive plan, especially coupled with the strong opposition received from the surrounding communities. In the current 2035 plan, the parcel of land under consideration in this request, as you've heard before, is designated office no retail, which generally corresponds to RO, not B. It was carefully chosen by the county at the time to ensure that its uses would have minimal impact on the adjacent residential properties. To preserve the integrity of and prevent adverse effects to the surrounding residential communities, spot zoning this parcel of land for the financial gain of a few at the expense of many would be a huge mistake. I am concerned about two problems which you've heard of here before. First, an even greater amount of traffic exiting Creekmore Road onto Route 6 to execute left-hand turns at a time when we are already addressing very serious, and I stress serious, irrespective of what VDOT said, traffic concerns with the county and VDOT at this intersection. And secondly, such development would most probably reduce the values of our homes, as adjacent B zoning would open the door for potentially detrimental types of businesses being located in our backyards. Spot zoning this parcel of land simply to accommodate the need for larger buildings than is permitted under RO is totally unnecessary. There is ample land located nearby that is already zoned and available for such development. The scale of this plan and the required B zoning is the wrong plan for this particular parcel of land. With your collective wisdom, coupled with all the concerns mentioned here tonight, and supported by the decisions that you made in the past, I strongly urge you to vote to recommend for denial this to the Board of Supervisors. And one other thing, one quick thing. We were the first residents in Creekmore Park back in 2004. There was no traffic on Route 6 coming out of Creekmore Park. It has greatly changed in the 15 years that we lived there. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Judy Blow, and I live at 281 Creekmore Place. And I hold a letter from my neighbors next door who were not able to be here, John and Patrice Strahan. They live at 275 Creekmore Place, and I'd like to read it to you, please. Honorable Commission members, we are unable to attend tonight's meeting and wish to express our opposition to the proposed rezoning request on Patterson Avenue and Creekmore Road from RO to B2. We recognize the right of the property owners to develop their property and have no opposition to the proposed medical office building development. However, we do not support rezoning. With the expanded rezoning approved, potentially undesirable uses could take advantage of a failure by the current developer. Thus, we do not support this request. Thank you.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Gordon McGill, and I live at 418 Regina Lane in the Creekmore Park subdivision. I'm going to make this short, but hopefully it'll resonate with a lot of people in the room. Just 3 years ago, my family and I chose to move to Goochland County as we were fed up with the urban sprawl that was happening all around us in Short Pump, where we had been for 70 years. We fell in love with the Creekmore Park neighborhood immediately because of the beautiful homes and private setting. And while we understood that the woods and property in question would one day be developed, we were assured that it would not be anything more than an acceptable size medical facility zoned as RO. I don't want this area to start heading down a slippery slope of rezoning that will inevitably open up the floodgates for other rezoning requests up and down Patterson Avenue. And all of a sudden, this area is looking more and more like what happened in Short Pump. I realize that this rezoning request is only meant to allow a bigger medical facility, but it's impossible for me to not think towards the future. When the medical facility closes up and it's zone B2, and a gas station or a restaurant or a laundromat goes right in its place. Also, like others have said, I strongly believe this something like this belongs in the West Creek Business Park. It's for these reasons and fears that I respectfully and wholeheartedly ask that you deny the proposed rezoning requests and stay true to the county's comprehensive plan that prevents Patterson Avenue from looking like Broad Street Short Pump in 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
I have a presentation. I'm June Turner. Hi, June Turner, 424 Regina Lane. I'm opposed to the proposed change to B2 zoning. I have 3 comments that I'd like to make tonight. One is home values, one is traffic, and the other is drainage. We've watched our neighbors sell their homes at a loss for the last 10 years, and we're finally hopeful that we will be able to recoup our investment. Each time this development is proposed, we've been told that it will enhance the value of our property, but we've never seen any credible evidence to support that, and we don't believe it. People don't move to Goochland to be closer to a warehouse, a self-storage facility, or even a large medical complex.
They moved to Goochland because of the beautiful setting, the nice people, the good schools. They moved to Goochland because they're tired of Henrico, Chesterfield, and the city. Traffic is a concern. Creekmore Road is narrow. You can see in this picture, this is my car leaving for work. There's barely enough room for 2 cars to pass on this road when both drivers are familiar with the road. It's only going to get worse when you add more cars to it. Next slide. The corner of Creekmore and Patterson is also a school bus stop, and parents park on the side of Creekmore Road to wait for the bus in the morning and the afternoon, because no one's going to let their child stand alone at the corner of Patterson Avenue. That's only going to get worse. I've sat there for 10 years watching cars whip around that intersection, and it's bad. Creekmore Road is also a dead end, and there's only one way in and one way out of the neighborhood. Next slide. You may have remembered this picture from last time we were here. This is the creek several years ago. There was water in it then, but it wasn't typical of the situation. I took another picture of the same section of creek last year during the big storm. It's a huge difference. It was frightening. You can't even see the sidewalk, the road, or anything. Next picture. And there's my driveway and my car. And the next picture. That's the road, and that's after the storm had ended. We couldn't have gotten through that. We couldn't have gotten out of our house if we had been home. We are terrified that that could happen again, and there's no guarantee that our retention pond is going to fix this. And adding this building space would be 79,600 square feet of hardscape to the area. Currently, Patterson Avenue, when you enter Goochland County, is scenic. Adding these buildings is going to change that. It'll also open the door to other developers to request zoning changes. We selected this location to live because we wanted to be away from traffic and congestion. We don't want Patterson Avenue to become another Broad Street, Hull Street, or Midlothian Turnpike. We were sold our homes with the promise that the development behind us would be comprised of small buildings. Please do not approve this. I also have a letter from my son, who was not able to come tonight because he is studying. Hi, my name is Jacob Taylor.
Would you mind handing it to Mrs. Parker, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
He's 16 and he's concerned about driving.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Andrea McGill. I live at 418 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park, and I respectfully ask that this commission deny the requested zoning reclassification. The parcel at issue is virtually surrounded by land zoned as low or medium density residential. The requested rezoning to B2 is incompatible with the current use of the land adjoining the parcel in question. The impacts to Creekmore Park would be anything but minimal. For instance, the parcel in question is not situated in a way to accommodate the number of cars that would be coming in and out of the office park throughout the day. And if I understand the Code of Ordinances correctly, under the current zoning of RO, access to that parcel will be limited to Patterson Avenue. Under the B2 zoning, however, the developers would be permitted to install a driveway to Creekmore Park, or to Creekmore Road, excuse me. And you've heard a lot tonight about the congestion that already exists at that intersection. I would also like to speak to the safety issue that it would cause. We don't have the map up on the slides right now, but if you look at the conceptual plan, you can see that Creekmore Road is a blind curve when you're coming west on Patterson Avenue and turning right onto Creekmore Road. People who are not familiar with that turn and who come whipping around that corner can easily run into somebody coming the opposite direction. So there would be a higher potential for collisions. And I have a 16-year-old daughter who is learning how to drive, and I fear for her safety as well. Even if access is limited to Patterson Avenue, drivers would be limited to turning right on Patterson, which, as you've heard, will make for a high number of U-turns at River Road in front of the country club. I ask you to please carefully consider whether the requested zoning ordinance is designed to solely serve the private interests of just a few individuals, or whether it will actually further the welfare of the entire county as part of the county's overall zoning plan. It appears that the rezoning would benefit the private interests of a few individuals at the expense of the property owners who built in and moved to Creekmore Park, with the understanding that the lot at issue would be developed in accordance with its current zoning classification. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Richard Dare. I'm from 305 Victoria Way, and I'm here to oppose the B2 zoning. The traffic is probably the number one reason that this shouldn't be approved. It's inconsistent with safety, simple as that. We also have problems with water. Water's an issue. I have a So you have to take a look at this to see how bad it floods in our area now. I'll call it unintentional consequences of developing. This is in front of my house during the flood. It was scary. My house was literally an island. The water completely engulfed my home. We could not have gotten out of here. And this is at the end after it stopped raining. So as you could see, it can't get much worse than this. The unintended consequences is from the development that's taken place. Across the street from here, I actually have a slide on that. This will run, I'll lose my 3 minutes. Stop the timer. Yeah, you can see how this land was probably it wasn't properly set up. We go from from 5 tubes to 4 tubes to 2 tubes, which doesn't allow the water to flow right out of the development. That in conjunction with Creekmore Place being put into being, allowed more water to come into that stream, plus across the street. I don't know if you guys got my slide. I had one more slide. Apparently it's not there. But in that slide, it would show all the trees that were removed across from. Thousands of trees were removed. All that water is just coming under Patterson Avenue through the stream into our development. That with the golf course makes it almost unlivable. Will we be called Creekmore Lake at the rate we're going right now? Honestly, in my own personal opinion, even RO is improper for this. Any type of development on here it puts us under peril. Like I think one of my other cohorts said here that we contributed over $25 million to this, to Goochland over the 14 years. I've been here since 2005, June of 2005. So I've seen the changes that have taken place. And I plead with you, please turn this down.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and distinguished members, my name is Pramod Mohanty. I live in Creekmore Park, 311 Victoria Way. I would point out 2 things. I'm requesting for the commission to deny this because of 2 important reasons. A lot of reasons have been cited. From my perspective, number 1 is the traffic. Traffic issues have been already addressed. Creekmore Park or Creekmore Road was meant or still is a country road. I don't think we forget that. It's still a country road, one lane. And somebody has to move to allow the other car to come in. So that country road now will be subjected to intense, immense traffic, and which is already, as has been pointed out, congested and prone to accidents. And here we are not able to get a U-turn sign, which may or which will probably reduce the traffic, reduce the congestion and potential accidents. It's just like So a doctor saying that you need some surgery, but, our evaluation doesn't see that you need it. It's just like that. The second reason, the traffic is one, and second is the water. I think this development has been poorly designed to accommodate the drainage. The drainage, as has been shown, is not the water. I think recently it's been increasing because of the weather pattern is changing, and the more drainage is coming there, and we are subjected to tremendous effect of these water. So it is two things, and therefore I recommend that it will be very complicated to live in that area. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening. My name's Cindy Peck, P-E-C-H-T. I live at 417 Regina Lane. I oppose the B2 zoning request. Once again, the people who enticed us to buy this property in Creekmore Park with the assurance of community excellence in a country setting and the assurances of the longevity, protection of the longevity of our investment with RO zoning on the adjoining property, a 7-foot masonry wall, which is, by the way, the current proffer right now, but there's been no discussion, but that's just a little aside in there. And now they're asking the county for a significant upzoning. The sole purpose is for their own financial gain. They're asking the county to change the existing rules just for them. As you heard in our petition, B2 zoning is not compatible with the comprehensive plan, which designates RO for that particular area. And further, it contradicts the fundamental principle of the comprehensive plan, which the benefits of development should be equitable and the quality of life should be carefully retained or enhanced. And so B2 zoning would certainly be the antithesis of this. Further, RO zoning really protects residential areas. In fact, in Section 11, there are 6 areas included under the special conditions for professional offices. And that also mandates the size of structures or groups of structures so that it will not be mistakenly considered commercial development. So again, the 7-foot masonry wall has not even been part of the dialogue. That costs a lot more than that tree save area. So it's really been disturbing to hear that. Also, you were shown that conceptual plan. However, the plan of development did not receive the final approval. So that Creekmore Road thing, it didn't get the final approval. The reason being because the bond wasn't posted, which is kind of apropos in this situation.
Time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cherie Lane. I live at 409 Regina Lane. I'm not going to repeat what all my neighbors have said because I think you guys get the point. I am strongly against this, obviously, as we all are. It does not follow the comprehensive plan that you put in for 2035. It's going to affect our property values. You guys know all that, the drainage problems. I do want to bring up, I was listening when Mr. Satterwhite was talking, and he said West Creek is problematic. That's correct. It's problematic with the traffic, which affects all of us. I have 2 children, one who has been in a wreck at that intersection because of this traffic. She's still alive. My son was also with her. It's a very scary thing. If you add this and make these I'm okay with you sticking them with RO. That's what we bought in 2015. We did our research. We saw it was RO. We were fine with that. I am strongly opposed to it going anything but that. The traffic is going to be terrible. We come out a lot. We turn right on Patterson and we go up to the country club and we do our U-turn there because it is dangerous. And I think the reason why VDOT said no U-turn was because there was only 2 wrecks there. That's just by luck of the draw. So I plead with you guys too, please do not pass this. Keep it as it is. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, my name is Mary Brownfield. My husband Bill and I live at 403 Regina Lane, and we do oppose the rezoning. I have a few comments of my own, most of which you've probably already heard, but I also have a letter from my husband who could not be here tonight, but he was also involved in an accident at the intersection. We lived in Short Pump for many years and wanted to leave, same reason everybody else wanted to leave, to come to rural Goochland. We had lived in Goochland many years ago and were really happy to find a place that suited our needs. And we liked Creekmore Park because there was not a lot of no through traffic to speak of. I oppose the rezoning for the same reasons many of my neighbors have mentioned, because of the drainage problems, the perhaps loss of value in our real estate, as well as the traffic and the noise. This is a letter from my husband. Dear Commission members, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting considering the rezoning change request. I certainly support the comments of my Creekmore Park neighbors and others this evening. Allow me to share a concern about a serious issue that can result because of this rezoning change. My concern is the issue of the planned exit from the proposed development onto Creekmore Road. The proposed 5, now 6, medical office buildings will place several hundred vehicles daily on Creekmore Road. Those trying to make a left turn at the Patterson Avenue crossover can only result in a more dangerous situation. All Creekmore Park residents continue to have difficulty exiting to head east on Patterson Avenue in the late afternoon. Trying to turn east last December at 5 p.m. while in the middle of the crossover, my Highlander was hit by a driver trying to make a U-turn at the crossover. Airbags were deployed, glass shattered, but I escaped serious injury. Mine was not the first accident at the crossover. Please consider that this property should remain sincerely, Bill Brownfield. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I also have a letter from 2 of my neighbors
Please
who
state
are
your
unable.
name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Keith Clark, and I live at 417 Regina Lane.
Thank you.
And I'll have plenty of time for my remarks, too. This is a letter from 2 of my neighbors to the Goochland County Planning Commission. We oppose the rezoning RO to B2 on grounds that it would result in additional flooding due to the large parking lot and an inadequate drainage pond. In addition, B2 opens up the possibility of many potential changes or proffers from the original proposed plans by this builder or a subsequent developer. The addition of an access from the parking lot to Creekmore Road also is a very dangerous proposal in an area already prone to accidents and backups. This is signed sincerely, Paul and Louise Spencer of 412 Regina Lane. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stated my name. Tonight, you're being asked to change the established zoning. You're being asked to change the law. RO zoning is compatible with Goochland's comprehensive plan, and this proposed change to B2 for this specific parcel fits the very definition of spot zoning. Tonight, you have heard from many of my neighbors. I haven't been keeping track and counting, and I'm sure you're going to hear from many more. all expressing valid, legitimate concerns. These people are my neighbors. They're also your neighbors. And they're expressing their concerns to you and asking you, to a man or to a woman, to defeat this rezoning. Our motive is simple. We want to protect our property. We want to protect our homes. We want to protect our very way of life. That's our motive. On the other hand, you'll hear from an attorney representing a client, asking you to change the zoning, asking you to change the law. As to their motive, I don't know. The property is already zoned RO, which does allow for medical office buildings. So why B2? That's a question that we all fear. We can only speculate. You as a planning commission have always given thoughtful attention to our remarks in the past, and I urge you once again to make the right decision, to make the fair decision, to make the proper decision, and reject this B2 rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Fernall. I live at 404 Regina Lane. My wife and I moved into Creekmore Park in September of 2004, 15 years ago. Creekmore Park was developed by Creekmore Park LLC. This is the same group that's trying to sell a majority of the land that we're talking about tonight. At the time we purchased our home, we were told by one of the partners of this group that the land along Patterson had been zoned RO by Goochland to protect communities like ours. This was also emphasized in a couple of advertisement brochures that they had put out. I'd like to read you just a couple excerpts from them. In the first one, it says, Creekmore Park brings to mind the values and time-tested traditions of small-town America. Just 36 elegant single-family residences, sidewalks, streetlights, all this. The heritage of Goochland County is mirrored in the architectural standards. The community is bordered to the west by Richmond Country Club golf course, to the north and east by West Creek, to the south by Patterson Avenue. Extensive landscaping and substantial masonry wall will be provided visual and sound barriers between the neighborhood and the future construction along Patterson Avenue. Another comment, Creekmore, country living with a Richmond address. And finally, they said, with careful planning and attraction to smallest detail, and they named the three partners, each Creekmore Park resident of a custom-tailored home will be a unique neighborhood with a sound, long-term investment. I don't think this rezoning will help our investment. The same partner, when we came before you, when Mr. Massey was trying to rezone a portion of the land, said that when he wanted to rezone B2 across the street from us, it was a bad idea. Now, if it's adjacent to us, he wants to sell his land, it's a good idea. I don't understand this. I worked for NASA for 42 years as an engineer. I worked for a lot of contractors, with a lot of contractors. And we expected them to provide what the contract said. As far as I'm concerned, we have a contract with Goochland and with Creekmore Park LLC to keep this zoned RO. I expect that contract to be honored. I ask you to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you put the map up of the whole area, please? My name's Wes Satia. I live at 422 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park, and my lot is one of many lots that will be directly affected by rezoning from RO to B2. But more importantly, the entire eastern end of Goochland County will be affected, and I strongly oppose this rezoning request and associated proffers that they are asking to go along with this B2 zoning. There are many reasons why this request shouldn't be approved, and you've heard many of these requests by my neighbors and concerned citizens. Why rezoning this lot will have a large impact on our county, specifically Route 6 west of 288 to Richmond Country Club, the overall goal to have balanced development that contributes to the welfare of the community, and 3, and why this proposal doesn't define the county's definition of rural character. If you look at a 2-mile stretch from Blair Road to Luckstone, that's a 2-mile stretch. Done this before, back in 2017, so I'll get straight to the numbers. There are 12 RO properties, 5 at Blair Road, 1 at 288, the 2 in question that's behind you right now, and 1 west of River Road, and 4 across from Luckstone. There's 17 B1 properties, 5 at Blair, 3 at River Road and Patterson, 9 at Luckstone, none in between. There are 195 M1 zone properties, which is everything in West Creek from Patterson to Broad Street, and that includes Sheltering Arms and the large medical office building next to it. There's 262 R3 residential lots all along Patterson Avenue and the surrounding subject property, 262. You know how many B2 lots there are? There are 1 in that 2-mile stretch, and it's on the furthest 2 miles away, west of the Mannequin Firehouse. This is a better plan that the one that is currently approved by the county, with exception of the second access off Creekmore Road, which should be eliminated for public safety reasons. Even though the buildings are larger than 5,000 square feet, that is not allowed in RO zoning, the building size are really not the issue, more so than the rezoning from RO to B2, which will allow the applicant additional profit in the marketplace. So I please hope that you will vote and oppose this rezoning from RO to B2. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Hand. I live at 304 Victoria Way in Creekmore Park. I'm actually in lot 35, which is one of the areas that's not going to have the 80-foot buffer. I know, Mr. Duke, you had mentioned earlier about the elevation that's out there. I can tell you in the wintertime, on our living room, we have some really nice big windows that were built on there, and I can stand in those windows, and in the wintertime, I can see cars going by. So I will be able to see those buildings, even with the 80-foot buffer when all the leaves are gone. So that's one of my concerns. Another big concern, obviously, is what we've already talked about before, is the traffic. It may not warrant a U-turn, but the first person that dies at that intersection, people are getting more and more aggressive there. The people coming out of the West Creek are getting even more aggressive, and you just can't get out of there. And somebody's going to make a mistake, and I can tell you, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm going to make a mistake out there. I'm not. I mean, and you can look out here. There's not a whole lot of millennials living in our neighborhood, right? And we're going to make a mistake, and it's going to be a death, and then someone's going to really be concerned about why they didn't put a U-turn out there, no U-turn sign out there. So I implore you, I'm against the B2 with my neighbors. Please vote no on this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Hand. I live at 304 Victoria Way. My property is property number 35, the next to the last property in the neighborhood, which has, as was mentioned by my husband, directly abuts the proposed development, as also the area that, according to the proposal, does not receive the buffer of the 80-foot tree buffer. Not only does it not receive this buffer, but it also has the side parking lot, which would impact my property, and the full access road, which would also impact my property. With the idea of this property being rezoned, it would be exceeding the 5,000 square feet, which also changes the hours of operation. It also changes the lighting, which would directly affect my property. Many of the other notes that I had with me tonight has already been addressed, so I will not continue to restate those, but I would like you to hear my opposition to the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Attia. I live at 422 Regina Lane. Actually, my neighbor couldn't make it tonight, so I have something that she wrote that she would like me to read, if that's okay. She says, "Good evening. My name is Karen Kennedy, and I own the property located at 420 Regina Lane in the Creekmore Park neighborhood. I do not support the request for a zoning reclassification from RO to B2. A zoning reclassification will result in negative impacts for our community and directly for my property. My home is located adjacent to the subject property. The reasons for my position are as follows. The rezoning request is not compatible with the land use plan as specified in Goochland County's 2035 comprehensive plan because it is not a balanced development that contributes to the welfare of the community and preserves the rural character. Land parcels, West Creek Business Park, and property located at the corner of Mannequin Road and Patterson exist that are already zoned for mixed use along the Patterson Avenue corridor in our immediate area. They are currently partially developed or not developed at all. The zoning ordinance approved by the Board of Supervisors on April 18, 2017 allows West Creek to accommodate not only light industrial, medical, but also office, residential, retirement communities, high-density apartments, and retail. As stated during the January 5, 2017 Planning Commission meeting, the Commission desires to get the right uses in the right areas. A reclassification to business limited from residential office behind our community would not be the right use in the right area, but would be an example of spot zoning. Hardywood and Kindred Spirits breweries have located in the West Creek development. Their presence is and will continue to attract other businesses and customers to that area. Professional colleagues and friends who drive on Route 6 in Goochland always comment positively on the natural landscape, which includes significant tree canopies, riparian areas along streams and rivers, native plants, wildlife, unique and varied architecture, and the lack of patchwork commercial establishments dotting the landscape. They are impressed with the rural character and small-town feel of the country. Prior to purchasing my home in 2007, I was assured by the developer, since he is a co-owner, through conversation, through promotional brochures, and the homeowner association document, that the property located behind my home would always be zoned RO. I would not have purchased the property otherwise. Thank you for listening. I don't know if you, that was hers. I would also like to speak for myself and say that I strongly oppose this too. My house backs up to the property that, is under question. Do you want me to?
Time.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Taylor. I live at 424 Regina Lane in Creekmore Park. I want to use this screen here that we have just to show you my property. This is my house. So I'm directly impacted by the development. Now, I bought that, had it built back in 2007, and I was aware of this development that was going to go here. It was going to be a 7-foot wall. I was fine with that because it's going to be aesthetically pleasing and the smaller buildings. So I'm opposed to this being rezoned to B2. Like my neighbors, I've had concerns about the effects this development would have on our neighborhood. There are other locations in the area that would be more suitable for a development such as this. This development would negatively impact our property values and our quality of life. I have serious concerns about the increase in the traffic to the area as well as the increase in runoff from the buildings and parking lot. So my wife showed you a previous picture of the rapids. That was my house. That's my house. So the water was right in the front going across here. RO zoning limits building size to 5,000 square feet each. However, in the proposed development of all the buildings are significantly above that size. If this parcel would be required for all of the buildings to exceed the size limits, perhaps this is not the right location for this development. So please do not recommend the rezoning of this to B2. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
It's my wife's letter. She'd like to have it turned in.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Thank you, sir.
And if anyone else would like to speak, there's a front row still available.
My name is Marion Kennedy. I reside at 283 Creekmore Place.
I'm opposed to the rezoning for all the reasons you've heard tonight. In particular, I'll just quickly reiterate, rezoning is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. It's inconsistent with surrounding uses. There's no need for a zoning change. There's sufficient land elsewhere for the applicant's use. As you've heard, the zoning change will significantly impact traffic, increase local activity, and big effect on Creekmore Road ingress and egress. In looking at the restrictions imposed under RO, looking at that compared to B2, the more restrictive RO benefits our neighborhood, our property values. One example that hasn't been noted, I think, today was that RO calls for no activity after 7 p.m. That would be different under B2, let alone other differences like allowing retail at some point. The last thing I'll say is if there has to be development, let's keep it reasonable. Obviously, the developer had that parcel in mind for development. It was agreed upon to be RO. RO was good enough then. It's good enough now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir. You've. No, sir. Anyone else?
I do have a question. Am I allowed to ask one?
No, sir. Anyone else have any comments, either for or against? I know we've heard a lot of opposition. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and speak for it? You should feel comfortable in doing so. Anyone else want to speak in opposition or in support? I'm closing the public hearing. Thank you. Mr. Satterwhite, would you like an opportunity for rebuttal? And please keep any comments, applause, or for everyone here to a minimum or at all while Mr. Satterwhite gives us his rebuttal. Thank you.
I doubt if I'll get much applause, Mr. Chairman, but the points that I see here, one point.
5 minutes.
I'll try to be, I think I can do it quicker than that, hopefully. One point was that this is, B2 is a precedent. I think the comment was made, this is a significant upzoning. Well, is that really the case? What was approved on this piece was 25,000 square feet. That's approved, 25,000. You can get on this piece 2 buildings of 5,000 each. That's 10,000. So if you take 25,000 and you add 10,000 to it, you got 35,000. And we're asking for something radically different. 35,000 versus 37,200, that's less than 1/2 of a building. So all this comment about spot zoning and this B2 is out of character with what you've got there now. It just doesn't add up. It just doesn't. The comments about the runoff and the asphalt, that is addressed at the POD stage, but we do have on our plan what is basically a 100-year retention pond. That's what they had, a 10-year retention pond on what was already approved by the county. We're not consistent with the comp plan. You can say that 1,000,000 times, and I may have heard it 1,000,000 times tonight. You can say it all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that the comp plan calls for office without retail, and that's exactly what we proffered. Exactly. It is in compliance with the comp plan. We've heard, okay, we had a zoning in 2014 of B2. It was denied. How could you possibly pass B2 tonight? You know why it was denied, the B2 in 2014? Because it was retail. We're specifically not having retail. That has nothing to do with their case. Comment said, you know, there's been no discussion about the wall. Well, I wonder why. Because if you look at that wall has absolutely insignificant buffering compared to what we're offering under this plan. You would have heard about the wall as much as you've heard about traffic and as much as you've heard about the comp plan if it were a valid argument. It's not. What we're offering is completely superior to that. I didn't come up with this. It doesn't warrant a U-turn sign. I mean, your staff did, VDOT did. It's terrible traffic conditions. Is it? How terrible can it be if you can't even turn to VDOT and get them to put up a no U-turn sign at Creekmore and Patterson? That should tell you that is not an issue with respect to this particular project. So, Mr. Chairman, these, I think, were the issues I heard, and if you boil them down, they come down to that. I think we've addressed all of these things in our proffers and in our comp plan, and we are consistent, actually very consistent. If you look like we're only 2,200 square feet different from what you could already have there now. So I would ask for your favorable consideration. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the applicant?
No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, the public hearing's closed. The applicant has given his rebuttal statement. I can understand the concern by the overwhelming majority of the community, considering, I guess, what was offered to the Creekmore development, the issues they've had so far with the development with respect to the design, and then what they have in front of them with the RO, and then wanting to change that zoning. And it would be, in my opinion, a spot zoning. I travel this road. I think we have an issue with safety at the intersection. Like I believe one of the neighbors said, if you wait for, VDOT, it seems that they wait for major catastrophes before they do anything. I don't see this being a good place for this. The rezoning is the biggest issue here, in my opinion, and the safety, the neighbors. Anyone else?
Well, since this is my district, I have a couple of comments. I've been in Creekmore Place 3 times now in the last 5 or 6 years. It's probably in Goochland County one of the best developed, prettiest subdevelopments there is in there. It's well laid out, the houses are well done, the landscaping is done. It's just a beautiful development. Unfortunately, the 3 times I went there were for rezoning cases. Like we've said before, we turned down the 2-building development, we turned down the big box development, and now we have another one. I think this plan is getting a lot closer to what we like. I like the buffers. I like the layout of the buildings. I like it doesn't need a wall. It has the evergreen on it. I'm concerned about the traffic because nobody knows more about the traffic than the people who live there. I want to remind the commission that when we did the development down the road for the Champion housing development, we made them eliminate a U-turn or a crossover on Patterson. So when you left that subdevelopment, you could only turn right and head west because of the accidents across from Rivergate. That development lined up with Rivergate, and they'd had accidents there, and it wasn't enough space there to get a full car across the intersection. And since we've had accidents there before, I think that sets a precedent for the traffic. Let's see, what else my notes say? I think if the buildings were the right size and met the RO, I don't know that I'd have a whole lot of problem with it. I'm real concerned about the runoff, and I don't know whether this retention pond is going to solve the runoff problem or not. But I would strongly suggest that that issue needs to be addressed with the county. When we did the townhouses across from Creekmore, it seems like to me that part of the development for that was that the developer was going to have a turn circle in there that was large enough to accommodate school buses. So they didn't have to stop on Patterson. They could go in and turn and come back out. Obviously, that's not the case now. And I hate to think, and I don't know that there's many other subdevelopments or developments anywhere along 4-lane Patterson that the school buses have to stop out on Patterson. Normally, they have to, even where I live off of Patterson, the bus comes into our development and goes out. I can see it on a 2-lane road, but I think that's real dangerous on a 4-lane road. You're waiting for an accident to happen. And I think it's a big responsibility when people buy a home and look at a development and do their due diligence and investigate what is surrounding them, what development's going to be, and they buy on that basis and put their, some cases, their life savings for housing into that, and then we come along and change it. If you can't depend on what the comprehensive plan says, I think we're sort of missing the boat of having a comprehensive plan and not making provisions for the people to depend on that, unless it's a real strong need to make that change. So for those reasons, I'm not in favor of this.
Well, Mr. Myers. After about the third person mentioned that it was inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, it dawned on me that under the current RO zoning, you could build something pretty similar to what was being proposed here. And so in my mind, having, you know, an office type setting with no retail is simply is not that much different. The traffic, that is an issue. I'm not sure if this is going to substantially change the problem with flooding. By that video, seems like they already have a pretty bad flooding problem even without this. I guess the engineers are the ones who have to determine whether any more drainage ponds are gonna help that or not. But technically, I don't see where this is that because very rarely I vote against the comprehensive plan. But what's proposed is not that much different.
Mr. Patuck, Mr. Duke, any comments?
I agree with John. I feel the, I mean, the traffic is bad. I drive through there. I know the traffic is bad. But it's already bad. This property is not causing the traffic to be bad. It may make it bad enough that VDOT does something to fix it. It may, you know, may actually improve the situation by having 200 more cars go through it a day. They may say, well, hey, we need a light. It's certainly not gonna, the runoff would certainly be addressed by the county with engineering, I assume. Is that right, Tom? Yeah. I mean, it has to be for a POD, right? Correct. Yeah. And it would be done for a 100-year flood event, not, you know, is that right, 100-year?
Under state law, the drainage that's looked at is typically for a 10-year storm.
10-year storm. And is that what these folks are showing us video of, is a 10-year storm?
No, that was a abnormal storm event that was more than a 100-year storm. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it was an extremely abnormal event.
And Creekmore Park would have followed the same guidelines when it was designed.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
So, I mean, and anything that's developed around it, even though it creates more runoff, the code is that the person that's creating that's changing the runoff has to protect downstream properties from
Correct.
that runoff.
Under current regulations, you cannot discharge any more than is currently being discharged from the site. All the increase has to be dealt with on site.
And typically that increase, it is cleaner after they treat it in these basins.
With stormwater regulations, yes, that is the whole point of them.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in agreement with Mr. Myers.
And if someone built something conforming to the RO zoning, how much different would the traffic be affected in that case?
They have it now. Mr. Patuck?
We don't have any control over what VDOT does or what they don't do. We can recommend or ask or try to talk to them, but they're their own institution, and really can't deal with that. Kind of agree with Mr. Myers that the difference between what they're asking with this new proffer with 6 buildings but less square feet is not that different than if it remained an RO. And I don't think the runoff is any different because the buildings are slightly larger than the 5,000 square feet.
Do we have anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like a motion that we deny.
I would second that for recommendation of denial to the board. Do we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
So the motion to deny does not pass.
Correct.
Well, I make a motion to recommend approval and just let the BOS have a shot at it.
I'll second that.
I don't think that we need that, do we?
Yes, since it was a motion to deny that failed,
All right.
nothing
Do we
happened.
need
Yeah,
another
that's-
motion,
I'm
yeah.
just- I'm wanted to make sure. All right. So we have a new motion that you're recommending approval
Yes, go.
as presented.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone
I'll
that's
second
seconding that? Mr. Duke is seconding that. All right. All those in favor of the recommendation of approval as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
The motion passes on a 3-2 vote.
All right. Mrs. Parker.
We have no old business and no other business.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.